So the problem with people with unrealistically high standards is that they're doing it because they think I need to achieve this goal in order to be worthy.
Mm,
With self-compassion, you're unconditionally worthy. You don't need to
mm.
achieve anything to be worthy. You're worthy when you fail, you're worthy when you succeed. It kind of takes that sense of evaluating your worth out of the question.
You're listening to the Mindful Mama podcast, episode number 338. Today, we're talking about fierce self-compassion with Kristin Neff. Welcome to the Mindful Mama podcast. Here, it's about becoming a less irritable, more joyful parent. At Mindful Mama, we know that you cannot give what you do not have, and when you have calm and peace within, then you can give it to your children. I'm your host, Hunter Clark Fields. I help smart, thoughtful parents stay calm so they can have strong, connected relationships with their children. I've been practicing mindfulness for over 20 years. I'm the creator of Mindful Parenting, and I'm the author of the best-selling book, Raising Good Humans, a mindful guide to breaking the cycle of reactive parenting and raising kind, confident kids. Hey there, I am so glad you are here today. Hey, listen, if you haven't yet done so, quickly just hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you've gotten some value from this podcast in the past, or you're gonna get it today, do me a favor, go over to Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and review. It really just helps the podcast grow more. It'll take just a minute, and I really greatly appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. In just a moment, I'm going to be sitting down with Kristin Neff, pioneer in the field of self-compassion research. This will be her second time on the Mindful Mama podcast. She first appeared in the Mindful Mama podcast in episode number 84 in 2017, way back when, so you can listen to that one if you'd like. But she is a professor at the University of Texas, Austin. She conducted the first empirical studies on self-compassion nearly 20 years ago, and she's the author of best-selling books, Self-Compassion and Fierce Self-Compassion. And we're going to talk about this idea of self-compassion. You know, why is it so much easier to be compassionate towards others than it is to be compassionate to ourselves? And we're going to also talk about the history of why it's so difficult for women. We discuss how having compassion for oneself is really actually no different from having compassion for others. We're all worthy of compassion. It's not something to be earned, but intrinsic. So I'm going to ask you to listen for 3 takeaways. Ask yourself, would I say this, what I'm saying to myself, to someone I really cared about? You can listen for the fact that we need both tender self-compassion and fierce self-compassion. We're going to talk about the difference and how we can harness the energy of anger and focus it on what we're trying to achieve. So I love this conversation. I love this topic. I know that whoever you are, wherever you are, you're going to get so much out of it. And I got so much out of it too. So let's just do it. Let's dive in. Join me at the table as I talk to Kristin Neff. So I love your new book, Fierce Self-Compassion, because as a feminist and as a mindfulness teacher, I really relate to so many of the things. And I wanted to ask you first about like kind of the idea of women and self-compassion, because your book is all about women and self-compassion. And you write
Yeah.
that like we would maybe assume that because women are socialized to develop qualities of warmth and care, that they're more self-compassionate than men. But the research shows the opposite, that women are less self-compassionate than men. That's so sad to me. So can you tell us
Yeah.
about this and why this is so?
Yeah. Well, also the research shows it's actually not biological sex, if there is such a thing, it's actually gender role socialization. So
Oh,
women who
wow.
are more androgynous, who identify more with the male and female gender roles, in terms of traits, don't have less self-compassion. And it's really about entitlement to meet your own needs, right? I mean,
Mhm.
but you say you're a feminist. So the patriarchy, I think, intentionally socialized women to focus on meeting others' needs and not their own, because that's and also not to get angry about anything, because that's a really good way to make sure that women stay subordinate, right? So basically, women are socialized that we need to be a good woman. We need to be self-sacrificing. We should always focus on other people first. That's what we like in women, that they're always focused on others. We don't like a woman who says, "Hey, I'm really proud of something I've done." It's like, oh, we don't like that, right? So this gender role socialization, even it's not that men are socialized to be self-compassionate. In fact, they're very uncomfortable with self-compassion. They don't show up at my workshops, but they are socialized to feel that their needs are worthy of being met. And women
Mm.
are socialized to feel that they should always be focused on others. And that's why they have slightly less levels of self-compassion, even though they have much higher levels of compassion for others than men do. So with women, it's all about the difference between how you treat yourself and others.
It's so fascinating because kind of I've sort of been led to believe is that kind of like what we may have more on the inside, right? We may express more on the outside, right? So you would think in some ways that that I mean, and maybe that's so maybe that can be a reason for women to practice some more self-compassion, right? So they can be more self-compassionate on the outside, but there's a real dichotomy between what we're feeling for others and what we're feeling for ourselves, you're saying.
Yeah, so there is for many people, right? So if you just, for instance, if you could college undergraduates, there's almost no link between how compassionate they are to themselves and others. But it's all explained by the fact that there are many, many people who are kind, caring, loving to others and treat themselves like crap. It's not the case that you get people who are like really self-compassionate and aren't compassionate to others. So
Mm.
basically, almost everyone is more compassionate to others than they are to themselves. Some people are kind of equally compassionate, right? And with age, the discrepancy gets a little less. But what we do know about the research, it's not like they aren't related at all, because when you train to be more self-compassionate, you actually increase in compassion for others. But this is a really big thing. It allows you to sustain giving to compassion for others without burning out. So if you just give and give and give and never turn the lens of compassion inward, well, you can kind of get away with it for a while, but eventually your cup will run dry. So
Yeah.
people especially who learn to be more self-compassionate are less likely to burn out from being a caregiver for others.
And you look at this from the lens of, like in this book, from the lens of like our social historical kind of status. And I've thought about this before, like at some point, like women were, considered property, and
Exactly.
so it was important for us to just be like if you cared for others, if you took care of children and you took care of the men, that was your value
That was your
from.
value, right? And so you learn to downplay your own needs, and to like you might meet the needs of your husband or your children. Their needs are more important than our own, right?
Mm.
In fact, a lot of women have trouble with self-compassion because they're afraid it's selfish, or that other
Yes.
people won't like them if they draw a boundary or meet their own needs, And so
Yeah.
women have to be aware, we have to be aware of our socialization so that we don't fall prey to the system that it was put in place to reinforce inequality. We can't forget that. This isn't accidental, right? It happened on purpose. Again, so women were considered property. Her whole place in life was to support her man. That was her value in society because she had less value in society than men did. And so really self-compassion I think, is a radical feminist act. It's not saying my needs are more important than those of other people, but it's saying they're equally important. I count too. And also, for instance, the Me Too movement, I completely see as a self-compassion movement. It's women saying, you're not going to harm me anymore. I'm going to have compassion for myself. Compassion means concern with the alleviation of suffering. Now, I'm not going to let you continue to harm me. I'm going to stand up and protect myself to help alleviate my suffering. And that kind of fierce energy is also a really important part of compassion. And unfortunately, the fierceness has been, people try to socialize us out of it. We don't like angry women. Women are supposed to be nice and sweet and compliant. And if a woman gets angry, they call her lots of nasty names. And so self-compassion says, I'm sorry if you don't like it, but my needs are important and I'm going to assert them.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yes. Amen. I love it. I love it. So, I mean, I was going to ask you about anger because I mean, this all like for me ties so personally in because like I felt all this, I felt like aggression and frustration. And that was as a young parent. And that was one of the things that really led me to a mindfulness practice. But I also worked on it out very consciously in paintings of predators.
Yeah, interesting.
Predator beast women. And it
Uh-huh.
was really
Yeah.
interesting, the idea of anger. And this idea for me, I guess for me personally, was this idea that like I felt like I had this anger, but I also felt like the world is telling me there's something wrong with me for having this anger, yet we all have
Yeah.
anger. And these predators that I painted, like they have aggression, but they have no moral qualms about their aggression to go hunt and eat their food. You know what I mean? Like, but yet we
Yeah.
have this, like, we have this I mean, a lot of the people I work with would like to just erase the anger out of them. And you write a whole chapter
Yeah.
about anger that I think is really fascinating here.
Yeah. So anger, I mean, often predators don't necessarily feel
Yeah, they're
angry.
not
Who's,
yeah,
well,
I
the
know.
person who feels angry is mama bear. Like
Yeah.
if I wanted to make you angry, I would attack your child. You'd be ferocious. You would turn into, again, mama bear. That's why I call it
Yeah.
mama bear self-compassion. And so anger, it just depends, what is it aimed at? Is it aimed at preventing suffering, or is it causing suffering? It's very easy. I mean,
Mm,
it's not easy to
mhm,
do, but it's easy to distinguish. So anger is productive and constructive, but it's aimed at like standing up for yourself,
mhm,
drawing boundaries. It focuses you, it gives you energy, it suppresses the fear response, right? It's
mhm,
very, very helpful when you're trying to reduce suffering or protect people or prevent harm.
mm,
And unfortunately, because anger, I mean, it's a tricky emotion, I'm not going to lie, and it can
mhm,
very easily, our sense of self gets sneaking in there, and it starts being ego defensive, and what you insulted me, and then you go after the person personally. So instead of preventing harm, you start harming others out of your anger, and
mm,
that's when it starts being really destructive, and it can be very destructive. So it's not like we shouldn't worry about anger, but here's the thing. So I have a fairly quick anger fuse, despite
me
all my
too.
years of meditation. That's just, if you met my mother, you'd understand. It's just inborn, right? And I used to be slightly ashamed of it. Well, it also would get me in trouble, because sometimes it would come out inappropriately and actually harm people, and I felt bad and I apologized. But I realized the energy that fuels this anger is the same fiery energy that's led me to accomplish what I've accomplished in life, and to, do stuff with my son. And it's the energy itself is neutral. The energy itself actually can be very, very helpful. So instead of focusing on somehow blaming the energy or saying we shouldn't have this
Mhm,
energy, we need to
mhm,
harness the energy and focus on what ends is it achieving,
mm,
right?
mhm.
And it can do a lot of good in the world. Again,
Yeah.
look at Black Lives Matter movement, or the Me Too movement. If the people weren't angry, they would just still be like, oh well, that's just the way things are. You know, I talk about tenderness and fierceness in the book. Tenderness is the healing that comes from accepting both ourselves and maybe the fact that life is imperfect. And fierceness is the energy of taking action to either protect ourselves or make changes in ourselves or others or the situation to alleviate suffering. And we need both. It's like yin and yang. One without the other is incomplete and imbalanced.
Yeah.
Sometimes meditators can fall into, I mean, not the really good ones, but sometimes you see it fall into this trap of thinking it's all about peaceful equanimity acceptance, when in fact it's equally about making change to help alleviate suffering.
Mm.
It's both, not either or.
Stay tuned for more Mindful Mama podcast right after this break. I have to confess something. I am fiercely protective of my time. I want my time with my kids to be the most important thing and to be able to be present for my life. So I hate to go shopping. I hate going to the stores to go shopping, which is one of the reasons why I am so thrilled that Stitch Fix is a sponsor of the Mindful Mama podcast. Specifically, did you know that Stitch Fix has boxes for kids? Yes, it is so great because shopping for clothes with my daughters can be challenging. And you have to keep up with the growth spurts and the changing tastes. It's so nice to sort of let other people help out with easy options that actually like fit their vibe, and they fit your wallet too. And it really just takes the stress out of dressing your kid. They've got you covered for budget-friendly, bright and easy styles that your kiddo will love. My daughter Sora loves Stitch Fix. Opening the box, she found some clothes that she loved, some that she didn't. It was super easy. And it really is so effortless. You have to try it. You can get clothes that fit your kid in the price range you want. Items start at just $10. With your feedback and input, the experts at Stitch Fix, they learn about your child's taste. So they send them styles that are perfect for them and affordable for you. So basically, it comes in this box. It's so fun to open. Your kids can try on pieces at home before you buy. You just keep what they love and you send back the rest. Shipping and returns and exchanges are all totally free. And they have every size from toddlers to picky tweens, right? They've got all the growth spurts taken care of. It's really sizes 2T to 18. And there's no subscription required. You simply order a refresh as needed or set it and forget it with like regular seasonal fixes. You're in control and you just spend what you want. It just makes it so much easier. I love Stitch Fix Kids. So try it today at stitchfix.com/hunter and you'll get 25% off when you keep everything in your kids' fix. That's stitchfix.com/hunter. There's a link right in the show notes where you're listening to this. Just look at the notes, scroll down, find stitchfix.com/hunter for 25% off when you keep everything in your kids' fix. stitchfix.com/hunter. Yes, thank you. I love that answer because it's true. Like we want to have some, we want to have we'd love to have a lot of that, more of that energy of equanimity and peace and all of that, but yeah, we've got to take that energy and harness it to make change in the world as well.
Right.
I love that. I mean, you talk about how the different sort of levels um of self-compassion and the way our patriarchal cultures um have affected women in different cultures, which I think is really interesting. You did research in India about this, right? And so I'd love
Yeah,
to hear
actually,
a
that's
little bit.
my dissertation research.
Yeah.
Yeah, about how how people think about their personal prerogatives. What rights do they have? How important are their own needs versus meeting other people's needs? I was really surprised because India is pretty patriarchal. There's a very long, heavy history of you know um, basically female subordination. And the woman I met, I mean, Indian women, they are not cowed. They're strong. They're assertive. I thought they would say, "Oh yeah, men's needs are more important." They said, "No, they aren't more important. The woman should be able to get her needs met, but she probably won't because it's like the weight of Indian culture is so heavy that they realized they were limited in what they could do, and so they had to work within the system, so to speak. But it's not, they didn't actually believe the system was fair. That's the thing that surprised me. I thought, oh, they've been enculturated. They think it's fair. These women thought for themselves. They knew it wasn't fair. But because they felt it was just too big, so to speak, to change directly, they just kind of had to work with what was. So it's really interesting to see that. So impressive. Really, really strong, amazing Indian woman I met. It was great.
That's so cool. And so what are some of the ways sometimes I think people like we're kind of in the soup of our culture so much that we can't see it, right? And so I'm
Yeah.
wondering like what are some of the ways that you identify that women in Western culture and like the US and in Canada and England maybe suppress themselves in ways that they don't even realize. Do you
Well,
see any of those?
I think the number one the one number well there's a few ways actually, but one a really important one is because it's so subtle, this idea that what makes people like us or not like us.
Mm.
People like us when we say yes. People don't like us when we say no. People like us when we're sweet and okay, that's fine, acquiescent. People don't like us when we're like angry or that's not okay. And so this subtly shapes us, right, in terms of all our interactions, and not just with men, with our families, other people. And so what self-compassion is, it's a way to say, wait a second, my needs count too. Again, not more than, but also my needs count too. What is it that I need in this situation? What's authentically true for me? And actually, maybe what I need to do is say no. And it may actually be the case that someone doesn't like it when I say no. And self-compassion gives you the ability to say, maybe that person won't like me quite as much, but I like me, right? I care about me. I'm actually the one who who's responsible for my own happiness. And so it really gives you a freedom of not being so dependent on other people's opinions of you to make choices in your life. So it's really linked to authenticity, autonomy, the ability to follow your dreams, do what you think is right, and to say no.
Your own approval. My mother gave me a great lesson in this recently at Thanksgiving. She has passed Thanksgiving duties off to my brother, and I mentioned that, and I think she I mentioned it pretty unskillfully. I'll admit that she passed it off to my brother, and she talked to me about it after and said, I'm practicing, what you preach. I'm holding a boundary. I'm saying no because this is better for me. And I now feel like, well, thank you, Mom, for that role modeling of how to
Yeah.
hold a healthy boundary for yourself and what's better for you, even if everybody doesn't it's not like the number one choice for like everybody in the family. It was right for her, and so I
Yeah.
appreciate that now.
And again, so what the research shows is it's not like, you're selfish, you only put your own needs first, but you don't
Mhm.
subordinate. You're always about compromise. How can my need, everyone's needs are important. How can we try to come up with a solution that as much as possible meets everyone's needs? So
Hmm.
it's just that you don't exclude yourself from the circle of compassion, but you don't say like my way or the highway either. It's really this balanced stance.
So as people start to realize that, or women start to realize that we're not meeting her own needs and we're subordinating say a woman's realizing I'm subordinating myself to other people, do people often like swing in that direction of like, forget all you, I'm gonna, kind of go to, do we go to extremes often as we're trying to get to that balance?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, I'd be honest, we don't really have research on that, but usually what I would kind of just observe in teaching people about this is usually not, right? So
Mm.
usually the people, at least the type of women who come to my workshops, are caring, they love their partners, they love their families, they're committed to their jobs. It's really more about how do I find balance, not like screw you, right? Um, but you have to deal with the fear. So this is why tender and fierce self-compassion, they go hand in hand. So the fierce self-compassion is the one that says, I really need to draw a boundary. I'm afraid they may reject me, but this is really important. I need to at least say my piece. But then the tender self-compassion is the part that can like hold the fear. I'm really frightened, or maybe I feel ashamed, or all those cultural messages may come up. And so we need to be able to hold with tenderness. It's kind of like a soft, nurturing mother. That's the tender self-compassion. We need to be able to hold with tenderness our pain, our fear, our shame, our feelings of self-doubt. At the same time that with this kind of fierce mama bear energy, we are able to, try to do what's right for ourselves and others.
Mm. All right. Tender
Imagine
and
it,
clear
imagine if
self.
a mother was only one way. Imagine if, you're mindful mama, right? Imagine if a mother was only about soothing, and then someone like tries to take your child and you're like, oh, please don't. You wouldn't, right? You wouldn't do that. On the other hand, if you're just about like being fierce, that's not good for anyone either. So you really need both, and
Yeah.
it has to be context appropriate and ideally integrated. Joan Halifax, has this great line I'm sure you've heard: strong back, soft front. So it's both
Mhm.
simultaneously. We hold ourselves tall, but we aren't rigid and closed. We aren't aggressive. We aren't hostile. We're tall, but we're also soft in the sense that we can do both simultaneously. And by the way, it is tricky. I'm not going to lie. I get it wrong all the time. But here's the thing, at least I do try. And then when you fall off the wagon, so to speak, you just get right back up again.
Because
So
you're self-compassionate, like you aren't giving yourself a hard landing when you fall, so you can start again more
exactly.
easily.
That's
Yes.
right. So again, the goal, the purpose is not to get it right, but simply to open your heart. And if your heart's open, then it's okay to get it wrong. We can learn from that. Okay, I see. Oh, I see. That was not quite right. Well, let me try again. It's really a process as opposed to, I got it down and now I'm perfect. Like, good luck with that one.
Yeah, progress, not perfection.
Yeah.
So for the listener who's saying, all right, this sounds good, maybe I need to practice this, let's talk about some of the process. How do we shift from that harsh inner voice? How do we shift from like condemning ourselves to becoming more self-compassionate?
Yeah, well, so luckily most of us have a really good template for compassion, and that's how we treat our close friends. Friendships even better than family because family, like because they're blood relations, you can kind of get away with maybe not being so compassionate. Or also, it's easier to be compassionate to people where we aren't personally threatened. Like if your child or your spouse loses their job, you might feel threatened and you might go into like freak out mode and not act at your best. Whereas if your friend loses his or her job, you're going to be less personally threatened. So you're more able to really draw on those resources of kindness and warmth and support. So most of us have some template of what to say, how to say it. So a very easy thing to do is to ask yourself, would I say this, what I'm saying to myself in this tone of voice to someone I really cared about? Do I think that would help? Usually the answer is no. What would I say? Especially if maybe, sometimes you don't say everything you think, but let's say my friend asked me, please, the honest truth, what do you really think? You hopefully say it with kindness in a constructive manner, even if there was some change that was needed. And that kind of gives you a template for how to relate to yourself. Again, it's not rocket science. We already know how to do it, most of us. It's just we aren't experienced in doing it with ourselves. We have to make this U-turn.
Stay tuned for more Mindful Mama podcast right after this break. Kick off 2022 with a better checking account with no monthly fees. We are supported by Chime, an award-winning app and debit card that has no overdraft fees, foreign transaction fees, monthly fees, or service fees. With over 60,000 fee-free in-network ATMs at many locations like Walgreens, 7-Eleven, CVS, you can access your money when you need it, where you need it. And you can also send money to anyone, even if they aren't on Chime. Fee-free for you and no cash out fees for them. Make your first good decision of the new year and join over 10 million people using Chime. Sign up takes only 2 minutes and doesn't affect your credit score. Get started at chime.com/hunter. That's chime.com/hunter. Banking services provided by and debit card issued by the Bancorp Bank or Stride Bank N.A. members FDIC. Get fee-free transactions at any MoneyPass ATM in a 7-Eleven location and at any Allpoint or Visa Plus Alliance ATM. Otherwise, out-of-network ATM withdrawal fees may apply. Sometimes Pay Anyone instant transfers can be delayed. The recipient must use a valid debit card or be a Chime member to claim funds. And it probably feels extraordinarily awkward at first if we're used to being hard on ourselves.
It does. Isn't it ironic that it feels more comfortable to call ourselves mean, nasty names? But, so it feels a little awkward. You just kind of accept that. Okay. After a while, it stops feeling less awkward. It starts feeling normal. And by the way, it's not like positive thinking. You aren't saying, oh, everything's wonderful, you're wonderful, because maybe that's not the case. Maybe things are horrible. Maybe you did something that was really mean and you need to apologize. But just because you did something mean doesn't mean that you're mean. Just because you did something horrible doesn't mean that you're horrible, right? So it's really, it kind of can see very clearly actions and behaviors that are helpful or harmful. And it gives you the safety to own up to when you've done something harmful. Because again, just because I've done something harmful doesn't mean that I am somehow bad. I'm just a human being doing the best I can moment to moment, trying to learn from my failures, going through life with hopefully some kindness and support from myself and others.
Yeah, we are worthy, we're each worthy of our own support and affection for ourselves just as much as anybody else's.
Exactly. When a baby's born, we don't say, okay, once you graduate college, then you'll be worthy of some kindness and compassion, right? It's intrinsic. It's intrinsic to all humans. So, and ironically, often we give a lot of other people compassion, but we somehow think that we aren't human. And if we start treating ourselves as not human, think of all the barriers that sets up between ourselves and others, and all the social comparison and kind of feelings of inadequacy, which really don't help anyone. It's actually quite self-focused as well. I hate to say it, but when you're lost in shame, you aren't really thinking about other people very much.
Yeah, I guess that is self-focused. I mean, self-centered in a certain way. I mean, that you're pointing to that.
Yeah.
That comment.
I should have been able to get it right. I'm not human. I should have been able to be perfect.
Yeah. It's like a chronic, we all have, it's like that sort of chronic obsession with our own individuality in some ways. And at least in the United States, I think we've got that to some
Well, I
degree.
think it's pretty universal, but ironically, self-compassion lessens the sense of separate self, because compassion by its very nature is a connected stance. It recognizes interdependence and humanity and the fact that a lot of causes and conditions come together to lead us to act as we do. And so the more you honor compassion, the less you're thinking of yourself as an agent who should be perfect and, needs to be beat up if they don't get it right, or somehow everyone else in the world is living a problem-free life and it's just me who's made a mistake, or it's just me who's struggling, which is a complete fallacy. Mm-hmm. So self-compassion reminds us of reality, really.
A lot of us were taught these ways of thinking, like this kind of achievement orientation, and then for women, we have to be perfect, these ideas that we have to like do everything perfectly and look good doing it and all that. We were kind of taught that from like our family or our culture and all of that. And so I'm wondering for you, Kristin, like did you have that some of yourself? I know a lot of academics do have that achievement thing. And also, like, I mean, at least I think for me anyway, I found it helpful to have a process of like forgiveness and understanding for those who did not know what they were doing when they maybe planted some of these things into in my upbringing, culturation, et cetera. And I'm wondering if you went through any of those processes yourself.
Actually, to be honest, not so much myself. I wasn't a really harsh self-critic. Before I found self-compassion, it just never even dawned on me. I never even, wow, you could be intentionally kind of supportive to yourself. What would that look like? And then when I learned about it, I tried being that way, and I was just blown away by the big difference it made. No, I wasn't a perfectionist, but I have very high standards. And a lot of people are confused. They confuse having high standards with having to be perfect. So for instance, we teach self-compassion to high-level athletes in college, right? Now they need to be at the top of their game. But ironically, if you start confusing your performance with yourself, and then let's say you miss a shot in a game and you start blaming yourself and like getting down on yourself, well, then first of all, you're going to unravel and you're more likely to lose the game. But also, just because you miss a shot doesn't mean that you're bad. So it's kind of separating your worth as a person from your performance. So the problem with people with unrealistically high standards is that they're doing it because they think, I need to achieve this goal in order to be worthy. With self-compassion, you're unconditionally worthy. You don't need to achieve anything to be worthy. You're worthy when you fail. You're worthy when you succeed. It kind of takes that sense of evaluating your worth out of the question. Self-esteem is like an evaluation of self-worth. Self-compassion just takes that out of the picture. But you may or may not have really high performance standards. But the difference is, if you do have high performance standards, it's because it's important to you, right? So an athlete, maybe they've trained their whole life and they want to be the very best. Well, maybe if you aren't a professional athlete, maybe once you let go of thinking that you have to be a certain way in order to be worthy, you realize, actually, this is good enough. It's kind of like, why are you aiming for those high standards? Are you doing it because you care, because you have dreams, because you want to be the best you can be? Or are you doing it because you think you aren't worthy unless you achieve your goals? Right. So self-compassion, the research shows there's no link to performance standards. Some people have really high ones. Some people are like, okay with something else, just depending on what's truly important to them. It certainly doesn't lower your standards. So not the athletes we talk to, man. They like it because it helps them be at their best.
That's awesome. I love that it doesn't lower your standards. I mean, I think that's some for you, dear listener. I think that's some Kristin's inviting you into some powerful introspection there about what are my motives? Is it a feeling of lack of worthiness that comes from that? And then as if it is that, we can practice, even awkwardly at first, some in giving ourselves some kindness in that moment, if we discover there is that feeling underneath it all.
That's right. That it's an intrinsic feeling of worth. Just, and all you've got to do to be worthy of compassion is to be a flawed human being who suffers. So if you pass that hurdle, which you probably do,
I bet you do.
You can check that box, right? So again, you don't really have to earn the right to compassion. It's an intrinsic part of being a human being.
And,
And
and
so,
it,
and when you start giving it to yourself, you're actually less dependent on getting it from others. It's nice when other people can give it to you, absolutely. But if for whatever reason they aren't able to, you aren't devastated. You aren't rudderless, because you could give that to yourself.
I love this. It's so powerful. So I know that the listener, you probably wondering, okay, this is amazing. I love this. I want this self-compassion. We're going to practice this. And how do I teach it to my kids? What is the best way for us to pass some of this powerful wisdom to our children, to the next
Right. Well, so
generation?
the first thing you need to do is start practicing it yourself. So maybe you're compassionate to your kids, but if you drop a glass and you say, "Oh, I'm such an idiot," you're modeling for your kid that that's the appropriate way to respond to mistakes. So there's two ways, there's two reasons why it's important to embody it. One is modeling. So the more you can model self-compassion out loud, verbally, the better, right? Because there's actually research that shows one of the ways we learn these dialogues is by observing them in others. But also because of our whole mirror neuron system. So as human beings, we've got special mirror neurons. We've got the brain has these empathic abilities. We're able to feel what other people are feeling, even if they aren't saying anything. It's not woo-woo. The brain is actually constructed this way, and especially parents and kids who are so connected. So one of the ways you can help your children be self-compassionate is when you give yourself compassion, just like you can get the stress. If your kid's stressed, do you feel stressed? You pick up their stress, do you feel stressed? Well, if you're compassionate, your kid gets some of your compassion. So I'll give you an example. So my son Rowan, he's autistic, right? And autistic kids actually have a lot of empathy. They have trouble perspective taking, but they're very sensitive to the emotions of others, right? Which is partly why they withdraw. But so we are really close. We're still very close. And what I would find was that, let's say in the early days, he used to have a lot of tantrums. He was pretty challenging when he was younger. And if I would get frustrated or just like blame myself or just, really get really distressed without tending to my needs, he would get more distressed, right? So if I got angry or frustrated or felt like, oh, it's because I'm a bad parent or whatever it was, he would feel it, and his behavior, he would become more distressed. But if I could give myself compassion for like saying, this is so hard, I don't know how to deal with this, I feel, oh, poor thing, I'd like be warm and kind and loving to myself, he would calm down, right? So what you embody is what you bring into every other person in your life. So another way to help your kids have self-compassion is to be a compassionate presence, right? And it's not just compassionate for them, it's also compassionate for yourself. So those are two ways. But then there's okay, yeah. But what about directly? Well, one of the easiest ways to talk to kids about compassion is the idea of friendship. Because by about 7, they're learning what it means to be a good friend. And so pretty early on, they get the idea that, would you say that to a friend? Or, are you being a good friend to yourself? And, what would you say to your friend? And those kind of ways of talking about it are pretty easily understandable. So for instance, we have a program for teens, and they absolutely love it. They're desperate for it because they feel so alone and isolated. So having tools that remind them that they aren't alone and they're part of this larger human community are really, really effective with this group.
Stay tuned for more Mindful Mama podcast right after this break. KiwiCo delivers enriching hands-on experiences that'll spark curiosity and inspire creativity. Kids can discover the engineering and mechanics behind everyday objects, the science and chemistry of cooking, geography and culture from new cultures, and brand new art and design techniques, all through seriously fun hands-on projects. My daughter last year did the ukulele, came in her KiwiCo subscription crate, and she loved it so much. Okay, so she's an older kid. It's one of their older kid projects, and they have projects for every age. It's pretty amazing. They've done them. The girls have done them at every age. They love them. She loved this project. She was just super absorbed by it, worked on it for hours. Brooks gave it 5 stars. Pieces are sturdy and well cut. We were impressed with the wood. We were also impressed with many other parts, frets, pegs, and strings. And apparently the instructions were clear and easy to follow, as my 14-year-old did it entirely by herself, staying up till 1 a.m. to finish it. She loved the process and has now enjoyed playing it. My daughter loved it so much that it inspired her to start learning ukulele. She asked for a ukulele for Christmas, and it's like really inspired this whole new set of like musical learning for her. Do your part to encourage your children to be innovators and creative thinkers. They won't believe what they can build and accomplish with KiwiCo. You give them the tools to learn new skills, build new experiences, and make new connections to the broader world. And the best part, honestly, is watching their confidence. Seriously, my daughter's got some confidence now. And loves it. She smiled so big as she shared these projects with me at all the ages. As a parent, I know it can be hard. It's hard to find creative ways to keep your children busy and challenged. KiwiCo does the legwork for you so you can spend quality time tackling projects together. And there's something really for kids of all ages, from littles to adults, honestly. And they just so creative and so well made every month. They'll be so excited to see these projects arrive in the mail. The day that box arrives is their favorite day of the month. Redefine learning and play. Explore hands-on projects that build creative confidence and problem-solving skills with KiwiCo. Get 50% off your first month plus free shipping on any crate line with the code HUNTER at kiwico.com. Such a great deal. You can find this link right in the show notes where you're listening to this. It's 50% off your first month. It's at kiwico.com, kiwico.com, promo code HUNTER. So beautiful. There it is. It's amazing. So when your son was having tantrums when he was young, and you were offered, were there any other ways that you offered yourself compassion? Because I know there are plenty of listeners who may be in the same boat and may feel overwhelmed and alone and frustrated with a kid with special needs or just a highly sensitive kid.
Right. Yeah. Well, so we've got a ton of practices. So we've developed a whole plethora of them in the Mindful Self-Compassion program and in the Mindful Self-Compassion workbook. I'm not necessarily selling it, but really just for information. All the practices are there. And so different things work for different people. But so one is just, again, like I say, imagining how you would treat a friend. Another very useful one is called the self-compassion break. So self-compassion is actually composed of 3 elements. It's not just the kindness. There's also mindfulness and a sense of common humanity, right? So the mindfulness is essential. If we don't open to the pain, if we ignore it or we just try to fight it, we aren't going to be able to give ourselves compassion. So we need to be able to turn toward our discomfort instead of immediately trying to make it go away. Turn toward it. Respond with kindness. Oh, that hurts. I'm so sorry. Is there anything I can do? That sense of wanting to help. And then also common humanity. Remember, compassion is a connected stance. It's about remembering that everyone struggles. Some people more than others, yes, absolutely. But there's nothing wrong with me for making a mistake. There's nothing abnormal about me for having struggle in my life. I'm not alone. Like really, literally, I'm not alone. So the self-compassion break, you just bring these 3 elements in. This is really hard right now. Turning toward it instead of trying to escape it. Difficulty, it's part of life. It's part of being a human. I'm not alone. It's normal. Just reminding yourself, it logically, but we forget it. So reminding yourself of that. And then some words of kindness. And also maybe some touch is also a really powerful way to convey kindness. Hand on heart, or maybe your face, or a little hug, or just holding your hand. Physical touch. Again, we're also programmed by evolution to respond to touch as a signal of care. So those are some of the ways. Very effective, very easy. You don't have to meditate for half an hour. Meditation is good. It really is, but it's not necessary to learn self-compassion.
And I'm thinking about this idea of fierce self-compassion includes like meeting our needs, right? And
Yes.
understanding that meeting our needs for sleep, for friends, for healthy food, for maybe breaks and things like that are also a piece of this self-compassion, fierce self-compassion
Right. Drawing
practice.
boundaries, speaking up, standing up for yourself. motivating change. So on my website, which is at selfcompassion.org, I've got a lot of free guided practices, and I've got a whole page on fierce self-compassion, and especially practices designed to engender that fierce quality and also the tender quality. So
Kristen, this has been so wonderful to talk to you about this. I really, really have to say, I totally enjoyed fierce self compassion. If you are interested in these issues, I think that you'll find it really fascinating, dear listener. So I encourage you to get a copy of Fierce Self Compassion. It's a fabulous book for you to pass around your friendship circle. I gave one copy to a friend of mine already. So go and get it. And then where can people find out more about you, Kristen, and what you're doing?
yeah, so again, just my website. If you can type self-compassion any which way. I got an early, all Google algorithms lead to me. So you'll find my website. It'll be first page that comes up. So you can just go there and explore. I've got research, I have guided practices, I have videos. There's also really importantly a link to the Center for Mindful Self-Compassion, which is really the training arm of what I do. I developed it with Chris Germer, my colleague who developed the MSc program. So you can take online training. You can take the full 8-week course online. So training is readily available if you want to take this further.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you for doing the work that you're doing and sharing it in such an accessible voice and with fierceness and tenderness in the way that you do. I'm really grateful for your work, and it's made a huge impact in my life and what I do. And I know for so many others. So thank you, Kristen.
Thank you. Thank you, Hunter.
I love everything that Kristin Neff has to say. This idea of fierce self-compassion is so needed, right? We need this so desperately. And, I'll let you in on a little secret. I'm working on my second book. I have a new book contract with my publisher, New Harbinger. And this piece about self-compassion is so, so important. It's definitely getting in there. And actually, something fun I'm doing with the Mindful Parenting members is that I'm reading some of the drafts, the first drafts of the chapters as they come out in the live in the Mindful Parenting members only group. So very cool thing that's happening. So a new book, yay! I'm so excited. Anyway, but this is, and Kristin's work really, really inspires me so, so much in this and all of this effort and everything I do with this. Hey, listen, if you have gotten something out of this episode, let me know. I'd love to know. On Instagram, take a screenshot of what you're listening to, put it in your Instagram stories, tag me at Mindful Mama Mentor. Let me know your takeaways. I would love to know. And of course, make sure you're subscribed and you've left that Apple podcast rating and review. It means so much. It just takes a minute. So thank you for being here. I hope this has helped you. I can't wait to see your takeaways and your ahas. Please do share them with me. And I'm so glad to connect with you, and I can't wait to connect with you again next week. Thank you so much for listening, my friend. Namaste.
I'd say definitely do it. It's really helpful. It will change your relationship with your kids for the better. It will help you communicate better. And I'd say communicate better as a person, as a wife, as a spouse. It's been really a positive influence in our lives. So definitely do it.
I'd say definitely do it. It's so worth it. The money really is inconsequential when you get so much benefit from being a better parent to your children and feeling like you're connecting more with them and not feeling like you're yelling all the time or you're like, why isn't things working? I would say definitely do it. It's so worth it. It'll change you.
No matter what age someone's child is, it's a great opportunity for personal growth, and it's a great investment in someone's family. I'm very thankful I had this.
You can continue in your old habits that aren't working, or you can learn some new tools and gain some perspective to shift everything in your parenting.
Are you frustrated by parenting? Do you listen to the experts and try all the tips and strategies, but you're just not seeing the results that you want? Or are you lost as to where to start? Does it all seem so overwhelming with too much to learn? Are you yearning for a community of people who get it, who also don't want to threaten and punish to create cooperation? Hi, I'm Hunter Clark-Fields, and if you answered yes to any of these questions, I want you to seriously consider the Mindful Parenting membership. You'll be joining hundreds of members who have discovered the path of mindful parenting and now have confidence and clarity in their parenting. This isn't just another parenting class. This is an opportunity to really discover your unique, lasting relationship, not only with your children, but with yourself. It will translate into lasting, connected relationships, not only with your children, but your partner too. Let me change your life. Go to mindfulparentingcourse.com to add your name to the waitlist, so you will be the first to be notified when I open the membership for enrollment. I look forward to seeing you on the inside. mindfulparentingcourse.com.